Hey guys, how's it going? Welcome back. Jesus loves you. You're special. You're important. Remember that. So, the Christian world, the churches in particular, right? A lot of the Christian networks, etc., they don't seem to take responsibility for much of anything. This is a big bummer, right? Because our religion teaches us to take responsibility, personal responsibility, etc., to make amends, right? To be accountable for our actions. We know that. Every word, thought, deed, etc. is going to be judged by God. We should know this. So, when CBN comes out and does a response piece to a CNN article that says that apocalyptic thinking in the Christian religion is leading to the wars in the Middle East, that it has something to do with our support of the wars in the Middle East, giving ammo, giving weapons, giving money, etc., and it's fueling it. But CBN comes out and says, it has absolutely nothing to do with it. And they just sit there and make every excuse under the sun for themselves and these foreign countries that are doing these horrible things. Zero accountability taken on any issue. The Christians believe they can do whatever they want, be however they want, as cruel as they want, support any kind of horrible things in the world politically, say whatever they want, and there should be no consequence. And if you dare criticize them or say, hey, you know what, that might not be right, or that might be not the right thing to say, do you think? How dare you? They're the persecuted ones now, right? They have persecution complex. And hey, I know I'm a Christian, right? I admit I'm in their group, essentially, belief-wise, on Jesus. I believe Jesus is the Messiah. He died for my sins, etc. So that makes me a Christian. But I understand that a lot of what we do causes harm in the world. We're human. We're sinful. We realize that. And yet I've not heard these groups, these churches, etc., take any accountability whatsoever. They think they just have all carte blanche to do whatever they want. Total dishonesty, not looking at it all. At least be honest and say, yeah, our eschatology says that XYZ, and that's why we support what's going on there. Just be real. But no, they want us to think that they have the moral high ground. That's the dilemma, right? They want to have the moral high ground and do what their Bible says, but they think their Bible says to support all this evil when it doesn't, okay? And people can use the Bible to call Christians out very easily, right? And it's happening, right? The world is waking up to this nonsense, this non-Christian in the name of Christ nonsense. And it's making us look bad. I wish Christians would take some accountability for all this stuff. And I'll give you an example in our own community. If you look at the gay issue, what about all the people who are in our churches who are homosexual, etc., who have these things going on? And they're being shunned and they're being kicked out of the church, or some of them are killing themselves. If you bring this up in the Christian world, they'll be like, what's wrong with you, you liberal, you woke hippie? No. Don't you care about people and what's happening in your community? I'll give you another example. Addicts. There are lots of people who are addicted in the church who are leaving and dying of overdoses in the church, outside the church. They're looking to the church for help. They're not being helped. Right? Where is the compassion? Where's the help? What happened to our church? There used to be a day when the Christian world and the Christian church was acting Christian. Right? They were helping people. They were helping the poor, the addict, the orphan, the widow. Right? The immigrant. God forbid. Well, not anymore. The church has turned into a very bigoted, hateful, mean-spirited, judgmental, judging you, but not me. Oh, I'm Christian, so I'm going to heaven. I can do whatever I want. I could drink. I could eat pork. Essentially, I do what I want. And it don't matter because I'm going to heaven because I'm a Christian. Okay? Well, what about everybody else? Who cares? Okay? You can think that. You have freedom, but that's not Christian. That's not what the Bible says to do. That's not what God says to do. So I just wish they would take some accountability. It won't happen. The church is done. It's going to support the Antichrist. It's actually already Antichrist. Most of the churches. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm sure there's a lot of good churches out there, but they are few and far between, and they are dwindling by the day, by the moment. Okay? I have heard so many horror stories in the churches themselves. Right? One of the guys I watch, he just came out, there's an LGBT pastor priest in a church. Oh my God, how horrible. The church is fallen. Okay, first of all, that's one church out of like billions. So the church has not fallen because they're doing something that you don't agree with. All churches are autonomous. They can do whatever the heck they want. Right? The only requirement is that they believe in Jesus, and they can create their own denomination, right? There are hundreds of thousands of different denominations. So you don't like that one, what they're doing with their flag, what flag they have, or what colors they have outside their church building, don't go to that church and stop whining and complaining and being fear-mongering. This is the right-wing stuff that it does to us, and I understand because I was there. You see one liberal thing and you go, oh, they're coming for us. They're coming for our children. Bro, that's one city, one town. You don't live in that town. Don't worry about it. They have freedom. Let them do what they want, right? But what I don't hear is, so I hear all the clamoring and the fear about the LGBT and the flag waving outside one little church in some liberal-ass city, right? That's not happening in your city, but you're going to sit and judge another city. But silent and crickets when the pastors are caught in sex scandals with children and women, right? Oh, well, that's just fallen humanity. That just happens. We're all human. What are you talking about? The outrage is in the wrong place in the Christian world. The outrage should be on that. How did we miss that? How did that person get put in a position of authority? How were we so blind? Did we put personalities over principles? Were we blinded by that person's personality, their ability to win us over with their speech and their words, which is a lot of what I see going on at the church, especially with the pastors. Most pastors are narcissists. Most people who rise to the top in pretty much any organization, but in the churches too, unfortunately, they're narcissists. They don't care about other people. They're completely self-absorbed. They love the sound of their own voice. And those are the people who are being elected. It's backwards. The church is not, you're supposed to elect the most humble people, the people who are going to help others and shepherd them. The word pastor means shepherd, right? That's not what's happening. So there's crickets when there's real stuff going on, right? Michael Tate just got caught in some serious sex scandals, really bad stuff, okay? I don't want to go into exacts, but you guys know what's going on. I'm sure you've seen it. If you don't, look it up, all right? And I'm not here to judge Michael Tate, but it's like all this, justification. Oh, sin, blah, blah, blah. Well, he says, oh, okay, all right. Yeah, blah, blah. These are real crimes, like federal crimes. But the LGBT preacher, that's just too far. I'm not saying I agree with that side. I'm not saying Michael Tate is a horrible person or anything should happen to him. No, I'm just saying, look at the outrage from the church. And they're manufacturing this outrage in us, in the parishioner. They're telling us what to be upset about and what to say, oh, it's not a big deal. Right? This is the deal, guys. You guys see it. Babylon has fallen. The churches are not what they used to be. They're if you study the church in the first century, you'll understand what God intended for the church, the body, the people. Right? The people were supposed to be together, one community, helping each other out, especially the widow, especially the orphan, people who needed help, the poor, right? In various ways in the first century, they pulled all their money together. They lived together. This is true community, right? Small house churches, Bible studies in people's homes, right? Every member church where everybody has a talent to bring to the body. God has blessed us with all these talents. And they got you sitting in a pew, hiding your talents, the very thing that Jesus told us not to do. They're teaching you to do that. And then on top of it, they're going to shame you. Are you using your talent? Are you doing, your talent for God in the church? Are you serving the church? Well, you won't let me, right? I have to be a certain caliber of musician to go play music on the stage, right? I can't be a pastor because I got to go to your little cemetery church, right? Your, what do they call them? Yeah, seminaries they call them, but we call them cemeteries, right? You got to get your PhD, your permanent head damage, to go up there and get brainwashed by whatever, things they tell you about theology. Well, it has to be right because I was taught it in this church, in this school, and that's what everybody believes. So now I'm just going to spit out what I said, right? They don't think for themselves. They don't actually like understand the Bible themselves. You got to do through that brainwashing thing to even preach the word. No, Paul said, if you have a thought, if you have a prophecy, if you have a word of God, I mean, read the Bible, right? Look at what Paul said about his church. He said the church should be that if someone has a spirit and a feeling to speak, they should speak in the middle of a church service, and then everyone else should be quiet. Try that in your church and see what happens. So you'll see how fallen the church has become from the first century. We can't even call this the church anymore. It's not a church. In fact, they've hijacked the word and the meaning of church. They think church means you go to their organization, you go to their building, you sit in their pew, you listen to their paid monkey in the suit who's paid by foreign governments and foreign countries to shout out other Christians like Candace Owens and Tucker Carlson. These people are being paid to do this stuff. They're paid mouthpieces, okay? A lot of them are Freemasons. They're part of the enemy. They're literally the enemy in sheep's clothing. Here we are, guys. It is what it is. Jesus, I hope he's coming soon, because I don't see how we're going to right this situation. We've been trying for decades, and it's just getting worse by the minute. Love you guys. Keep coming back. Stay in your word. Stay with community of people. If you feel called to go to church, go to church. Cool. You feel like you want to help them get out of it. Cool. Not. If you think it's good to be there to serve, that's awesome. If you feel like your church is not serving you and you want to go check out another church, do that. Don't be shamed by what they say. Oh, don't go church hopping. No, go church hopping. Please go church hopping. Why? Because most of these churches are fallen and horrible. Should I stay in a church that's preaching the wrong thing, acting the wrong way? They treat me like garbage. Like I said, I know so many stories from people with church hurt. Forget church hurt. I'm talking about church like abuse. And it runs the gamut, right? We got serious abuse that should have been stopped and should have never happened. Then we have things that are, like not as serious, you could say, but they're just as serious, right? I have friends who brought their children to the church. They themselves were serving in the ministries, various ministries, right? Year after year, giving their time, their energy, their tithes. What do we ever get back for this? Nothing. Well, not that we're looking to get anything back, but we get crapped on. And the more we do, the more they ask, and the more they shame you. You're not doing enough. You don't know how many stories I've heard with the same story. One friend of mine, she brought her kids, 2 children. She had the children working in the ministries for years and years and years. One day the pastor said, I need to speak to you. Brought her in his little office with his power trip, right? And he says, God told me that you're not right for this church and you need to leave with your children. Guess what happened to those children? They left not just the church, like the pastor told them to. They left the faith. They don't want nothing to do with Christianity, nothing to do with Jesus, nothing to do with God. Guess whose fault that is? You tell me who's going to be held accountable on that day in that situation. And God told him. Woo! Talk about blasphemy. Using the Lord's name in vain. That's really what it means to use the Lord's name in vain. It doesn't mean to say a curse word with God's name in it. As if God's offended if you use his name next to a dirty word. Yeah, break. And sometimes if you say Jesus Christ, which is not even connected to a curse word, but you use it as a curse, no, you're using the Lord's name. Isn't it a good thing to use the Lord's name, no matter what the situation? If you're about to die and you say, Jesus Christ, you think that your last thought is Jesus Christ? Hey, that's not what it means to take the Lord's name in vain. It means to represent you. You wear the Lord's name, and when you go out and misrepresent him and do things in his name, you're taking his name in vain. So when you say the Lord told me, sheesh, I'll be careful with that statement, and then kicking people out of the church with their children so that they leave the faith. Hey, man, I'm not the judge. I'm not the jury. And to be honest with you guys, maybe I'm talking out of turn because, I wouldn't want to be a pastor. I don't know that I can handle the responsibility, the power, the temptations, right? So maybe God is shielding me from that. Maybe I have no business even talking about this. I don't know, but I feel somebody needs to call it out. Ain't nobody saying nothing, right? And there are people who are, thank God, thank goodness. A lot of these Christian ministries online are calling these pastors out, and they realize exactly what I'm saying. Not in the political thing so much. A lot of them are more right-leaning, that's fine. But they see, and a lot of them they stopped going to physical churches so long ago. And we get fed here online. I mean, we can feed each other. This is Every Member Church. You guys can start your own YouTube Play music. Do your talent for God. Preach. If you have a word, Paul tells us to do this. You have a word from God, bring it. That's what it's supposed to be. We all get together, probably sit in a circle, not staring at the back of each other's heads in rows, and then the big man's up there elevated above us behind a pulpit, which all comes from pagan, Roman, and Greek practices. That's not Christian at all. It's nowhere in the Bible. Those were pagan, Roman, Greek ideas, practices that came into the church. The church has fallen, guys. It's done. We are the church. This is church right here. Anybody watching this, thumbs upping this, subscribing to this, commenting, or just listening, and when you go out and you talk to your friends, your neighbors, when you pray for people, when you start your channels, or you write books, or you write music, or you teach and you teach your children, right? Even if you don't directly say God's name, but you're being an example of him to the world, you're preaching, you're spreading the gospel, you're being the church out there, right? Now that we're done being the church in here, this one church I go to sometimes says, now go be the church out there. That's good, right? When you teach your children, right? Women and men, fathers, mothers, etc., who raise children, that right there is a service to God. The Bible talks about that. You don't take care of your family, you're worse than a heathen, no, worse than a non-believer. Raising children, I think, is one of the best services in the world and the hardest. Sometimes I feel like that, guys, because I work with kids and I try to help them, and I feel like I've helped a lot of kids in various situations with mental health, with education, getting them out of abusive situations, etc. Because I work in social work situations, education. I work with early childhood, special needs kids, abused kids, right? Very extreme situations. And I've seen progress, and I've seen miraculous things happen, and I've taught them about God even when it wasn't supposed to, right? And I've also been in religious schools where I was just openly able to do that. And sometimes I feel like, as good as I've done for them, I'll never be near the good that a mother has done to raise her son and teach him about the Lord, and he becomes a believer. I just think there's something special about that surpasses everything else. I don't know. Could be wrong. It's just a feeling. I just feel like parents and mothers in particular, especially believing mothers who teach their children about Christ, there's no greater gift. And fathers as well. If people raise their children right, it would absolutely change society. I think that's the number one thing that could make this world a better place. Parents with their children, communities with their children, right? The next generation, it's all about that. But where are we at with all that, guys? Do you see that going anywhere good? And to be honest, I'm kind of split on it. It's like, in some ways, I see society going in really positive directions compared to the 1950s or whatever, but even before then, right? With civil rights and liberties that have happened, that, things were worse then in that sense, right? Women's rights, et cetera, but on the other hand, I see that things are also getting worse, right? With technology, with the amount of sin that's in the world, right? With government takeovers. So part of me, the Christian eschatology part, says there's no hope for this world. It's done. Only Jesus can come rapture us up, have the tribulation and have his millennial reign is the only thing that'll work. Another part of me says, which is, could be like maybe the amillennialist that says, the Christians are supposed to bring the kingdom of God onto the earth. I don't really believe that. So I don't believe that we're able to do that. I think we need Christ. But part of me could sort of see that idea in general, that hey, society is kind of going in a positive direction. And a lot of it is because of Christianity, right? Christianity helped make, emancipate the slaves, right? And made slavery illegal in America, right? The social work movement in the 1800s was a Christian movement. That came into the time period of the Church of Philadelphia. It's mentioned in the book of Revelation. The church of what? Brotherly love, right? And Jesus commended them. It's one of the only churches he didn't have any criticism for. And that's the time when Christians had the social gospel, where they were going out and helping people, right? And they created these social work communities. And the friendly helper, they called them. Social workers, before they had that title, they were called friendly helpers or friendly visitors. And they would go to door to door and just kind of talk to people and ask, how you doing? What do you need? Do you need any services? Do you need us to help you find services? How are your children doing? Do they need educational services? This was all from Christians, right? So I'm sort of those two minds, but ultimately I do know that God is real. Jesus is real. He wants us to be loving, no matter if he comes soon or later, no matter what the eschatology is. So I love you guys. Keep coming back. Just keep serving God. He's so happy for us. He loves us. And every single one of us is so unique and special. And he recognizes that because he made us that way. And he's proud of you, who you are. So keep doing you for Christ. All right, guys? Love you. Keep coming back. Peace.